CAA number 3, Katie Hurrieg. Proposition 227. Proposition 227 took effect in 1998. It dismantled most of California's bilingual education programs. Only 2 school districts were not directly affected: San Francisco and San Jose. Parents began to feel as their children were being neglected, so eventually federal courts mandated bilingual education in schools to meet the needs of ELL students. National Defense Education Act of 1958. The National Defense Education Act of 1958 was passed in response to Sputnik, the satellite that demonstrated the Soviet Union's early lead in space exploration, and was the first national effort to strengthen mathematics, science, and foreign language instruction. This impacted ELL students because their needs in language were being viewed as necessary in schooling. Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 banned race, sex, and national origin discrimination in public facilities. This impacts ELL students because discrimination over oneself and language was ending in the eyes of the law, and schools began including more bilingual education programs. Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, or ESEA, addressed the academic needs of poor children. Typically, families of the lower income have children who are ELL students. This act supported those children and families on different financial levels. Title VII. The Bilingual Education Act was signed in 1968, also known as Title VII, which authorized resources to support educational programs, train teachers, develop and disseminate instructional materials, and encourage parental involvement. All of these resources positively support the schooling and success of an ELL student. Brown versus Board of Education. Brown versus Board of Education was a case that outlawed segregated schools as inconsistent with equal education. Some parents of ELL students still argued that submersing their children in mainstream classrooms designed for English background children was an unequal opportunity for their education. Rio versus Reed. During Rio versus Reed, a federal judge ruled that the Patchogue-Medford, New York school district had violated the rights of LEP students by providing half-hearted bilingual programs that included no bicultural content in their classrooms. This impacts ELL students because their education was at stake. Again, they were receiving an unequal opportunity for a successful education. Luau Regulations. The Luau Regulations stated that bilingual education would be mandated in all schools where at least 25 LEP children of the same minority language group were enrolled in 2 consecutive grades in elementary or middle schools. This impacts ELL students because it makes providing bilingual education programs in schools mandatory for those who have a population of LEP students. Ethnic Heritage Studies Act. The Ethnic Heritage Studies Act authorized federal aid to establish research centers and develop curriculum materials. Even though this act was short-lived, it provided attention and research into the curriculum of ELL students. This impacts those students because while this act was in power, it provided more insight and observation into the curriculum and standards of an ELL classroom. Luau remedies. The luau remedies were announced on August 11th of 1975. These guidelines told districts how to identify and evaluate children with limited English skills, what instructional treatments would be appropriate, when children were ready for mainstream classrooms, and what professional standards teachers should meet. This impacts ELL students because they set rules and standards for those who run and are teaching ELL programs, and allows for a smoother process. These are my citations. Crawford, Chapter 5, The Evolution of Federal Policy, pages 105 through 125.